There's a moment right before everything goes wrong, when you can feel it in the air. Not the recycled kind of air that gets pushed through the ventilation shafts on a deep space station. I mean the real thing. That electric charge that prickles at the back of your neck before a storm hits, before someone makes a mistake they can't walk back. I felt it the second she walked through the door. I need to back up. I've been working the gravity bar on station Verath 9 for going on 11 years now. If you don't know what Verath 9 is, and most people outside the mid-transit corridor don't, it's a refueling hub. A waypoint. One of those places that exists not because anyone wanted it to, but because the math said it had to be there. We sit right at the intersection of three major shipping lanes. The Keth Passage from the Outer Rim, the Caldris Express running from the northern colonies, and the old Merchant Road, which sounds fancy until you realize it's just the oldest trade route in this quadrant, and half the ships that run it are 300 years old and smell like it. So we get everyone through here. Galactic Union diplomats on their way to somewhere important. Rim traders just trying to make rent. Settlers heading to colony worlds. Soldiers rotating back from deployment. Refugees who don't look you in the eye because they haven't slept in weeks. And Deathworlders. That's not an insult, by the way. It's what the rest of the galaxy calls them. Humans. People from a little blue planet called Earth in a spiral arm that most galactic maps don't even bother to label. See, the thing about Earth is, it shouldn't have produced what it did. The gravity is higher than the galactic average. The atmosphere is a cocktail of reactive gases that would burn out your lungs if you evolved somewhere quieter. The surface is 70% ocean, but the dry parts are filled with megafauna that learn to eat each other. Disease vectors that adapted faster than most species' immune systems could respond. And an axial tilt that produces climate swings that would cause evacuation orders on any other inhabited planet. And what came out of all that? Humans. Fast healing, fast learning, high endurance, weirdly emotionally complex creatures who built cities and rockets and philosophies in basically no time at all on a galactic timescale. Who laugh when they should be afraid. Who decide to stand up when anyone with better sense would run. I am not human. I am a Varecki. We are long-lived, slender, pale-skinned, and built for comfortable mid-gravity environments. Our homeworld has almost no large predators, and our history of warfare is short and mostly embarrassing. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand my perspective. I was not prepared for her. Her name, I would learn later, was Mara Selks. She came in alone. No escort, no luggage visible except a battered gray duffel she'd slung over one shoulder like it weighed nothing. She wore civilian clothes, dark trousers, a worn jacket with the Interstellar Merchant Corps patch on the shoulder, scuffed boots. But the way she moved wasn't civilian. It wasn't quite military either, not in the rigid formal sense. It was something in between. That specific kind of careful that means you've spent time in places where careless gets you killed. She was tall for a human female. Not the tallest person in the bar, but tall. Dark-skinned, close-cropped hair, with a jaw set like she was thinking through something and had decided to table it for later. She looked maybe mid-30s in human age, which I've been told means almost nothing because their aging is strange. Some of them at 35 have seen more than most people see in a century. She found a seat at the bar itself. Not a table, not a corner booth. The bar stool 2 seats down from the Keth trader arguing loudly with his partner about fuel costs. She set the duffel down against the foot of the stool. Didn't chain it up. Didn't keep a hand on it. Just set it down the way you'd set something down when you knew nobody would be able to move it without you knowing. House blend, she said to me when I came over. Warm, and whatever you're putting in it to balance the taste at this altitude, double it. I wasn't putting anything in it to balance the taste at this altitude. She knew that. She was telling me she knew what station pressure does to beverage chemistry without making a show of knowing it. I liked her immediately. The trouble didn't walk in until 40 minutes later. 3 of them, Galvath soldiers. Not active duty, you could tell because the armor had personal modifications on it, the kind that regulations don't allow but that officers look the other way on once a soldier mustered out. Decorative scarring on the plates. Personal insignia burned into the shoulder guards. The Galvath are a species from the inner rim, bipedal, slightly taller than humans on average, with overlapping scale plating on their forearms and the backs of their hands. Gray-blue in color, with 4 digits on each hand and eyes that sit wide on the face, almost at the temples. They're built like they're ready for a fight. That's the honest assessment. Their homeworld has about 70% of Earth gravity, and their civilization has been involved in military actions for the last 600 years, almost continuously. They're tough, experienced, and they know it. These three in particular had the specific kind of loose, easy confidence that comes from having won enough fights that you've stopped checking whether the situation actually calls for one. They came in and they were loud about it. One of them, the biggest, who I will call the lead because that's what he was being even if it wasn't official, scanned the room the way a predator scans a space. Not looking for threats, looking for hierarchy, figuring out who in the room he was above, which in his estimation appeared to be everyone. His gaze moved across the bar. It stopped on Moira. I noticed the pause. She didn't look up from her drink. The lead said something to his companions. I couldn't hear it. The bar was loud and the Keth traders had gotten louder, but one of his friends laughed. Not a good laugh. The kind that's an invitation to the first person. They came to the bar. Two of them took seats on the far end. The lead came and sat down directly next to Mara, not across the bar, not at the stool with a gap, right next to her, closer than station etiquette permits between strangers. She noticed, her eyes went to him once, came back to her drink. He ordered something loud and pointed, name-dropping a specific brand that the Gravity Bar carries but rarely serves because it's imported and expensive, and the kind of thing you mention to establish that you can afford to mention it. I got it for him. He didn't thank me. He looked at the back of Mara's head. Merchant Corps, he said, in galactic standard which everyone on station speaks. Long way from a shipping lane. She didn't answer. I'm talking to you, he said. She turned her head, just enough to look at him from the edge of her vision. I know, she said. I just didn't think you were saying anything worth answering. One of his friends made a sound. The lead's expression didn't shift exactly. Galvath faces don't work the same way human faces do, but something in his body language tightened. Deathworlder, he said. The word had a specific weight when he used it, not the neutral species designation weight, the other weight. The one that's supposed to land like an insult. Yep, she said and took a drink. I need to be precise about what happened next, because I've been asked about it many times since, and I want to get it right. He reached out and grabbed her arm. Not a shove, not a threat from a distance. He put his hand on her forearm, her drinking arm, and squeezed. Now I have a sensor array behind the bar that monitors for biometrics, because station law requires it for security logging. I can tell you that the pressure he used when he grabbed her was approximately 3 times what you'd use in a friendly grip. It was meant to communicate something. Superiority, physical dominance, a reminder that she was in his space now, however she'd ended up here. She went very still. I've seen humans go still like that exactly twice in my career. Once when a man realized his ex-wife was sitting 3 stools down with someone new. Once when a pilot recognized an enemy she thought was dead. It's not the stillness of fear. It's the stillness of something that has spent time as prey and spent more time as something else, and is now choosing which one to be. She set her glass down, slowly, with the precision of someone who has decided to be very careful with the next 30 seconds. She looked at his hand on her arm. She looked at his face. You should let go, she said. Her voice was completely even, like she was advising him about the weather, like she was being helpful. He didn't let go. Here is what I was expecting. I was expecting her to pull her arm back, maybe say something sharp. Maybe he'd escalate, I'd have to call station security. They'd take 20 minutes to arrive, they always do, and the whole thing would dissolve into a noise complaint and a fine and a permanently banned customer. That is not what happened. What happened was this. His other hand came up, the free one, and he struck her. Open palm, across the side of the head. Not full force, I think. Or maybe it was, and she rolled with it, I couldn't tell in the moment. The sound of it cut through the bar noise. The Keth traders stopped arguing. Everyone in the immediate vicinity went quiet. She rocked to the side with it. Came back to center. The whole bar had a beat of silence. And then she moved. I have replayed the security footage from the bar's recording system so many times that I can describe it in very fine detail. But here's the honest truth. In real time, watching it live, I missed most of it. It was that fast. Her right hand came up and trapped his wrist, the one still holding her arm. Not a grab exactly. A clamp. The kind of grip that locks the joint. He tried to pull back and his elbow went the wrong direction and he made a sound. At the same time, she was off the stool. She moved into him rather than away. That's the thing I couldn't process in the moment. When someone strikes you, instinct says step back. She stepped forward. She moved into his space. One shoulder dropped. Something happened at his hip. I couldn't follow the specific mechanics. I am not trained in combat, and what she was doing was not the kind of combat you learn from watching it. There's a human word for it. Grappling. Close-range fighting where the leverage of your body becomes the weapon. He went down. Not slowly, not stumbling. Down. The stool he'd been sitting on went sideways, and his body hit the floor with the kind of impact that makes everyone in the room realize they're watching something real. 300 pounds of armored Galvath soldier down on the floor of my bar. She had his arm pinned, twisted behind him at a specific angle, and her knee was in the center of his back. She was kneeling on him, calm as anything. Like she'd done this, specifically this, so many times it had stopped requiring thought. His two friends were half standing from their seats. She turned her head and looked at them. Just looked. Neither of them moved. The bar was silent for a long second. Then the lead made a sound, something between pain and fury, and she increased the pressure slightly on his arm, and the sound changed to something smaller. "Here's what's going to happen," she said, still that conversational voice. She wasn't breathing hard. "You're going to tell your friends to sit back down. Then you're going to tell me you understand that what you did was not appropriate conduct on a neutral station. And then I'm going to let you up, and all three of you are going to finish your drinks quietly and leave. Sound good?" He didn't say anything. She applied just a little more pressure. "Sound good," she repeated. "Yes," he said, quiet through his teeth. "Tell your friends." He looked at them, he said something in Galvath. They sat back down. She held him another moment, not out of anger, I think, but just to let the reality of the situation settle in properly. Let it finish being real before she released it. Then she stood up, smoothly, stepped back, let him get up on his own. He got up. He didn't look at her. He didn't look at me. He straightened his jacket. He collected his drink. He sat back down on a stool at the far end of the bar, as far from her as he could get. His friends migrated to join him. Nobody spoke. Nobody made eye contact. Mara sat back down on her stool, picked up her drink, took a sip. "Sorry about that," she said to me. "You're apologizing to me," I said. "It's your bar." I didn't know what to say to that. I wiped down the part of the counter near her, which is what I do when I'm processing something. "Is your head all right?" I finally asked. She touched the side of her face where the slap had landed, considered it. "It'll bruise," she said. "I've had worse." "I have no doubt," I said, and I meant it. She stayed another 2 hours. The Galvath soldiers left after 30 minutes. They paid their tab, which I noticed. Didn't make a scene going out. The lead kept his back straight and his eyes forward in the way of someone who has decided that dignity is the only thing left worth salvaging. A few other people came and went. The bar filled up again, noisier. The word spread the way words do on small stations, not through anyone saying anything directly, but through the particular silence that settles around a table when the people at it are discussing something they saw. A few people glanced at Mara. She ignored them with the practiced ease of someone used to being looked at. Around her second hour, a Tharvan family settled at the table nearest the bar, one of the species with the large bioluminescent patches that shift color based on mood. The children's patches were flickering bright blue-gold, which means excitement and curiosity. One of the kids, maybe 7 years old in Tharvan development, climbed halfway off their chair to stare openly at Mara. The parent reached out to redirect the child, murmuring something apologetic. Mara caught the kid's eye and made a face, a perfectly silly, scrunched, wide-eyed expression that had no combat application whatsoever. The kid lit up gold bright and burst into something that sounded like laughter. The parent's patches went warm amber, which is relief. Mara turned back to her drink like nothing had happened. That's the thing about Deathworlders, in my experience. The ones who are genuinely capable, I mean the ones who have been tested in ways that would break other species, they don't perform it. They don't need to. They can be terrifying one moment and make a child laugh the next because those are not contradictions to them. Both things come from the same place, the same attention to what's actually in front of them, the same willingness to be present. Before she left, she paid her tab, full amount, no discount for what had happened, though I would have offered one. "Good house blend," she said. "I didn't put anything in it to balance the altitude," I said. "I know," she said, and she smiled, "but you would have if I'd needed you to." She picked up her duffel and walked out. I watched the door for a moment after she left. Then I went back to wiping down the bar, which is what I do when I don't have the words for something. Part 2, what the station records say. I looked her up later. I'm not proud of that. Barkeepers are supposed to keep confidence, and looking up a customer in the station's public transit records feels like a violation of that principle. But I was curious, and curiosity on a waypoint station is its own kind of disease. Mara Selks, age 37, Earth Standard, certified Grade 6 cargo specialist, 3 active contracts in the mid-corridor, formerly Interstellar Merchant Corps active service 8 years, before that, Earth Defensive Forces 4 years, 2 deployments in the outer conflict zones. The outer conflict zones. There are 7 of them. Areas of the galaxy where the political situation has been unstable enough, long enough, that Galactic Union peacekeepers rotate through on 6-month cycles and nobody stays longer than they have to. The casualty rates in the outer conflict zones are something that the Union doesn't publish directly, but that you can calculate from the pension records if you're patient. Myra had done 2 deployments. She'd come back from both. I read that and thought about the lead, about the particular stupid courage it takes to put your hand on someone you don't know, to assume, based on nothing, that they're less than you, to gamble on a waypoint station in the middle of nowhere that the woman sitting quietly with her drink is someone you can touch without consequence. I thought about the sound his body made when it hit the floor. I think he'd been carrying that assumption for a long time. The assumption that he was the most dangerous thing in any room he walked into. That his size and his armor and his history of winning made him the apex of every situation. He'd been wrong. And the thing about being wrong like that, specifically, decisively, in front of other people, is that you can't unhear the sound of the floor. You can't unfeel the specific helplessness of having your arm locked at an angle your body didn't agree to while someone who isn't even breathing hard explains the terms of your release. He walked out of my bar, knowing something that he hadn't known when he walked in. I hope it helped him. I genuinely do. Part 3, the thing about deathworld physics. Here's something that took me years to understand about humans, and I only understand it partly even now. Their world is hostile. I know I said that already, but I don't think people really sit with what that means. Their planet has surface gravity that puts constant pressure on every joint, every cardiovascular system, every respiratory decision their body makes. They developed in that. They grew up in it. Their bones are dense, their tendons are wound tight, their hearts push blood against a gravitational pull that would cause a Varecki doctor serious concern. And because of all that, a human who trains their body, who actively, deliberately teaches it to be better at what it evolved to be, becomes something remarkable. The Galvath soldier who hit Mara weighed approximately 300 pounds armored. He had a reach advantage. He had the first strike. He had 2 allies. He had a history of winning fights. None of that mattered. Because Mara's body had been built from birth in conditions that made his training environment look like a rest spa. Because every joint she'd exercised had done so against a gravitational demand he'd never faced. Because the density of her muscles, the trained reflexes in her nervous system, the specific tactical knowledge she'd absorbed in 8 years of military service in the most dangerous posting routes in the galaxy, none of that could be seen by looking at her. She looked like a woman sitting quietly at a bar. She was something else entirely, and he'd had no way to know that. And she'd given him a chance to not find out. He'd chosen differently. I've talked to other humans since then, in the 11 months that have passed since that night. Station Verath 9 gets a fair number of human merchants now. The Corps has expanded their routes through the mid-corridor, and I make a point of asking them questions when I can. because I find them interesting in the way you find something interesting when you can't quite map it onto anything you know. One of them, a young man named Theo who runs cargo on the Caldris Express, told me something that stayed with me. "The thing people don't get," he said, "is that we're not trying to prove anything. We didn't choose to come from a death world. We didn't sign up to be strong or resilient or whatever word people use. That's just the water we swam in. You don't brag about being able to breathe your home atmosphere." "Then why," I asked, "did she not just walk away when he first started trouble?" Theo thought about it. "Because walking away when someone puts their hands on you isn't de-escalation," he said. "It's just teaching them something about how far they can push." He said it the same way she'd spoken to me, conversationally, like it was obvious, like the logic was so fundamental that he was slightly surprised it needed saying. I thought about the Tharvan child's laughter, about the way she'd touched the bruise on her face, matter of fact, no performance, about the lead's back as he walked out. "She didn't hurt him more than necessary," I said. "No," Theo agreed. "She never does. None of us do, really. That's the thing. We know exactly how much force is enough, because we grew up around forces that don't show mercy and we learned the line." He took a sip of his drink. "Earth teaches you where the line is," he said. "Everything past it is just wasted energy." Part 4, the aftermath. Station Verath 9 has a security log. Every incident gets filed. The Galvath soldier filed a report that night. I know this because 2 days later, a station security officer came to the gravity bar to ask me about the incident. She was a Lithrani, a species with excellent recall and the kind of deliberate, patient manner that makes them good at investigations. She had my sensor logs, which I'd provided under station law. She had the recording from the bar's security system. She asked me if I wanted to press charges for the disruption. I said no. She nodded. "The Galvath soldier's report claims the human female initiated the physical contact," she said. "My sensor logs show otherwise," I said. She nodded again. "They do," she paused. "The human female left no contact information in station records, departed on the second morning transit. We won't be pursuing charges, insufficient grounds, and the station's review board agreed the response was proportionate." "I should hope so," I said. She looked at me with the particular Lithrani expression that means they've considered something from multiple angles and arrived at a conclusion they find slightly amusing. "Interstellar Merchant Corps doesn't train that," she said. "That's from before." "Yes," I said. "The outer conflict zones," she said. "Yes." She stood up, gathered her notes, paused at the door. "You know what I find interesting?" she said, not quite looking at me. "In the security footage, right before she put him down." "What?" "She gave him exactly 3 seconds to reconsider," she said. "I timed it, 3 full seconds between when he grabbed her and when she acted. She was waiting to see if he'd choose differently." I hadn't noticed that. I thought about it after she left. 3 seconds. An eternity in real time when someone is hurting you, when someone has put their hands on you and you could end it. When you are, and this is the part nobody talks about, almost certainly capable of ending it faster. She waited 3 seconds, because she was hoping he'd make the right choice. He didn't, but she gave him the chance. Part 5, the line. I want to be clear about something, because I've been telling this story for almost a year now, and people respond to it in ways I don't always expect. Some people hear it and focus on the fight, on the mechanics of what she did to him, on the gap between what he assumed and what was true. They find it satisfying in the way that action is satisfying, clear cause, clear effect, a clean resolution to a problem that refused to de-escalate. That's fine, it's not wrong. But it's not what stays with me. What stays with me is the 3 seconds. And the Tharvan child's laughter. And the fact that she apologized to me for the disruption to my bar. And the way she knew I'd have balanced the beverage chemistry if she'd needed it, and said so as a kind of acknowledgement, not of her expertise, but of my attention. Of the small care I try to put into this job on a waypoint station that nobody wants to be stationed at. She saw that, she named it, and she left. There's a kind of strength that announces itself, that wears armor modifications and name-drops expensive drinks and grabs at strangers to establish its position in the room. I understand it. It comes from fear, mostly. From the deep animal terror of being small, of being overlooked, of not mattering. It makes a lot of noise because it needs the noise to feel real. And then there's the other kind. The kind that can sit quietly at a bar and drink a house blend and notice that the bartender cares about his craft and just exist in a space without needing to dominate it. The kind that waits 3 seconds. The kind that makes a child laugh. I've been a barkeeper on Varath 9 for 11 years. I've seen Galactic Union senators and Rim pirates and refugee families and soldiers and settlers and scientists pass through this station. I've seen the full spectrum of what intelligence and civilization produce when you give it enough time and pressure. Mara Selks was not the most powerful person I've ever served. But she was, I think, one of the most complete. Theo was right, by the way, about the water they swim in. Earth produces something that is very difficult to produce anywhere else in the galaxy. Not just physical capability. Not just the bone density and the high-gravity cardiovascular systems and the reflexes built in hostile environments. It produces people who have genuinely integrated their capacity for violence with their capacity for kindness. Who know, at a cellular level, what force costs and what it's for. Who can be the most dangerous thing in the room and choose, actively in every moment, not to need to be. Most species get one or the other, dangerous or kind, capable of harm or oriented toward gentleness. History tends to select for one of those traits because in most evolutionary contexts they work against each other. Earth somehow got both. I don't know if that's lucky or terrifying. Maybe it's both. Maybe those two things are closer than I'd thought. Part 6, what she left behind. She didn't leave anything physical in the bar. No forgotten items, no signed credit tab, no contact information. She walked in, dealt with what needed dealing with, and walked out. But she left something in the room that I can still feel when the bar is quiet, and I'm wiping down the counter before close. It's hard to describe. It's the sense of a standard having been set, of a bar having been raised, and I don't mean the furniture, I mean the kind of bar you measure your own conduct against. The kind that, when you encounter it, makes you aware of the distance between where you are and where you could be. I think about her when the bar gets rowdy, when someone starts pushing, when I see the early stages of a situation that might become a situation. I find myself watching for the 3 seconds, the space where choice lives, the window where someone could still decide to be the better version of themselves. Sometimes they take it. Sometimes they don't. That's not my job to control. My job is the bar, the drinks, the small care. But I watch for it now. Because of her. A few weeks after she left, I was talking to a Galvath merchant, a different one, nothing to do with the soldiers, and I mentioned the incident. Just obliquely, without names. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "We have a saying. The Galvath, roughly translated, the one who cannot imagine being bested has already lost because they have stopped learning." I hadn't heard that saying before. "Is it well known?" I asked. "It should be," he said, "but it's easier to say it than to live it." He took a drink. "The outer conflict zones," he said after a moment. "Were any of our people there?" I thought about it. "Probably," I said. "It's where a lot of fighting happened." He nodded slowly. "Then some of us learned," he said, "and some of us didn't get the chance." He didn't say which category the lead fell into. I didn't ask. I think we both knew. Epilogue, the bar after close. The gravity bar on station Varath 9. 2 in the morning, station time. The ventilation hum. The soft amber glow of the low-light strips I keep running after close because I like the way they make the bottles look. The recycled air that smells like metal in distant places. I wipe down the bar, same as I do every night, same as I've done for 11 years. And I think about the things that pass through here. The cargo and the passengers and the stories that never get filed anywhere. The people who come in carrying things that don't show up on any manifest. Mara Selks came in carrying something. She set it down for a little while, drank her house blend, left without making a fuss. And somewhere in the mid-transit corridor, on some shipping lane I can't see from this station, she's out there, doing the job, being exactly as quiet and as careful and as complete as she was in my bar for 2 hours on an unremarkable night. The galaxy is a complicated place. It has species that have been at war for centuries and species that have been at peace for longer. It has diplomats who have never touched violence and soldiers who have never known anything else. It has every variation and shade of what intelligence can become when you give it enough time and enough pressure. And then it has deathworlders, who came out of the hardest school in the quadrant and learned both things, who can sit quietly and make children laugh and wait 3 full seconds for someone to choose differently, who, when the choice doesn't happen, end the fight cleanly and ask if the bartender's bar is all right. I wipe down the counter. The bar is all right. It always was.